right, families, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. Thank you for joining us in our first Tribe Transitions webinar of your summer experience. My name is Heather Deer, and I'm the Director of Family Engagement here at William & Mary, and this just kickstarts a fun summer we're going to have together learning about all things Tribe Guide Checklist and all of the many ways that you can support your student as they prepare for this next exciting part of their William & Mary journey, their first steps. I'm joined by Lauren Garrett, Director of Student Transition Engagement Programs, and Taylor Slavin, our Assistant Director of Family Engagement, and we're here to talk all things Tribe Guide 101. Before we really dive in, I'll give you some housekeeping notes. Q&A will be enabled at the end to ask any questions you have for our presenters, myself and Lauren. This session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel very shortly today or tomorrow, and will be shared with you via email. That leads me into family engagement. Our office really is here to support you all summer during your student's first year, second, third, fourth, and beyond. Anytime you're supporting your student, hopefully family engagement is there supporting you to support their success and their path here at William & Mary. We do this through a variety of different ways. Consistent email communication is one of them. So if you made it here, hopefully you saw our newsletter yesterday or our Tribe Guide is Live email last Friday that indicated we would be having this session. Our emails will continue almost every week or every other week throughout the summer to prepare you for your students' first steps at William & Mary, and that will continue during your students' time. Every month during the academic year, you can look forward to a newsletter and email communications as needed to keep you in the loop about all things happening here on campus. We also offer this Tribe Transition webinar series. This is the first in at least 10 scheduled webinars that we'll have this summer. All of them are going to be recorded, all of them taking place at noon Eastern. So if you can't make it for a live session, those recordings will always be available to you. We also upload those to Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you prefer to listen to some long-form content while you're cooking, cleaning, walking the dog, or commuting to your daily job. We have a dedicated phone line for all families, 757-221-2508. Just anytime you want to give us a quick call, just ring that phone line, and we've got 2 professional staff here and student employees ready to help answer your questions, and a dedicated email for all families, families@wm.edu. So anytime you have questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We're also offering this summer Zoom office hours for parents and families. Those are Tuesdays at noon Eastern and Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern. Much different than a webinar. These are just casual opportunities for you to hop on, have some face-to-face conversation with myself or Taylor. We can get a little deeper and dive a little deeper into some of your questions that you may have, and really just have some of that face-to-face contact if you want to talk to someone about what's going on or what questions you have related to your student's transition. Now, my partners in STEP have a ton of resources for students. All of these that I've listed and named specifically are for parents, families, and supporters. So if your student hops on an office hour, I might redirect them to a student opportunity that's best for them. And I will just name off the top, I am not an academic advisor and I cannot offer any advising guidance. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about attending our office hours. And we offer so much more in family engagement. These are just the high notes, but really just want to let you know that we're here for you. Any questions that you have, we're here to support, and we're ready to walk on this journey alongside you. Like I mentioned, our team is a team of 2 professional staff, myself, the director, and Taylor, our assistant director. Taylor here is going to be helping answer some questions in the chat and keeping track of that Q&A for us, as I know you'll have many questions. Both of us are on those office hours and both in the office full time. We also have a graduate assistant and a student employee who will be here with us throughout the summer. So if you call and you don't get myself or Taylor, and you may get Caroline or Araceli, they're dedicated members of our team and can help answer your questions as well as we prepare for your arrival in August. Okay, Lauren, what is our next slide there? All right, we're going to dig into the meat of this webinar today. So the Tribe Guide is live. It went live last Friday, May 1st, noon Eastern. And I know just based on office hours and the questions that we've been getting from families via email and our phone that you have some questions about things in the Tribe Guide and you're diving right in, which is wonderful. But really today is all about orienting you to this resource, how to maximize this resource, and also just pieces of advice we've learned over the years as we support cohorts of students and families navigating the Tribe Guide. This is your Tribe Guide 101. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Heather and Taylor, for having me on this first official Tribe Transition webinar series offering. Hello, incoming families and supporters. We're so excited to meet you alongside your student when you arrive in August, and hopefully we'll have a chance to get to know you a little bit better over the coming months. As Heather mentioned, this is an opportunity for us to literally orient you to the Tribe Guide because we know that it can be a little daunting. It's a very complex website structure, and a lot of words and phrases and acronyms are specific to William and Mary, which often can trip up folks who may not be familiar with our vernacular, with our phrasing. And so what I'm going to go through today is pretty simple, and it's going to be pretty fast paced. And so that's one of the beauties of having this webinar recorded is that you can go back and reference that and maybe even share it with your student if you know that there's something that they should be seeing, but maybe they're just not looking or digging deep enough. That recording can come in really handy, not just for this session, but for others down the road. So make sure you bookmark those and you keep that handy. So we're going to talk through a little bit about the site structure for the Tribe Guide. The Tribe Guide references the holistic series of web pages, generalized information around four primary topics: advising and registration, health and wellness, housing and dining, and student involvement. And then you have a page that's dedicated to the summer to-do list, or the checklist, as folks will reference it across the university spectrum. There's a general checklist that's produced and available online for families and supporters to follow along with. And then there's the My Tribe Guide, which we'll talk a little bit more about in depth here in the next slide. And lastly, you're going to find in the Tribe Guide links to orientation, both new student and family, as well as our ever popular Contact Us page as well. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into things. And we're going to talk first about the My Tribe Guide and the general checklists, because this is what is deriving really and truly your summer experience. So the general checklists are generalized. They are broad overviews of tasks that incoming students, whether first time in college, transfer, exchange, or a host student within the joint degree program with the University of St. Andrews, have to complete over the course of the summer months before they arrive on campus. We provide these general checklists out sort of on this public-facing web page, so families, supporters, external folks to the university community can follow along and support their incoming students as best as possible. Everything in a student checklist needs to be completed by the student themselves. And so all that personalized contact or content, all of those links, all of that very prescriptive, let me get my words out, prescriptive information for students based off of population, maybe scholar group, etc., will be found in the My Tribe Guide. The My Tribe Guide is a 4-year undergraduate student portal that your students will be utilizing over the course of their entire William and Mary experience. The incoming student checklist and task list items found in their My Tribe Guide are just the start. This is where we will kick out opportunities and resources to students during their first, second, third, fourth, maybe fifth year, if they decide to stick around with us a little bit longer, where we share with them opportunities about this is the study abroad fair coming up, this is an opportunity to declare your major, et cetera, et cetera. And so by using the My Tribe Guide for the incoming students, we're hopefully helping them acclimate to how we disseminate information to them, which means that it may not always come in email form. It may require them logging into this checklist, into this portal, using their William and Mary credentials and accessing the information in front of them that's personalized for their experience. So In terms of thinking about what are those tasks specific to the upcoming semester, I'm going to run through some highlights that hopefully you and your students have already been learning and exploring. During the month of May, we've got some pretty big topics for students to be addressing and to be thinking through. When your student logs into the My Tribe Guide, they're going to find that they can't technically access their housing application. They can't technically access their personal information questionnaire until they complete two important tasks. One is that we ask them to add their supporters to their student records so that you can receive the information from family engagement about upcoming summer activities, those newsletters, webinar information, etc. And we ask them to complete the new student inventory. The new student inventory is required for all incoming students to complete so that one, we can match them with a pre-major academic advisor, and two, so we can plan for their arrival on campus. We like to know a little bit about our incoming student cohort so that our programming, events, and activities all are specific and applicable to this student cohort versus cohorts we've seen in the past. So that new student inventory really is the key to unlocking the rest of their Tribe Guide checklist within the My Tribe Guide portal. Once they've completed the inventory, they will start to see other tasks become available. Tasks specifically are opened on a scheduled basis because we want students to not necessarily work ahead. Sometimes there isn't enough information. Sometimes they don't have all the information to make solid decisions around some of these tasks. But we also don't necessarily want them to spend the entire last few weeks of their potential high school transition worrying about these tasks when there's so much more time in which to accomplish things. We've also very much intentionally scaffolded the summer task list so that students are completing things in sequence based off of information and needs. So we want to make sure they get their housing completed first, then we move to academics, and then we move to social transitions. So you'll see that May is sort of core information, making sure that they have signed up to connect with other people, making sure they've completed their housing application, and that they've registered themselves with accessibility services if there are services needed that are directly connected to their living environment. This is also a great time for students to upload their photos for their tribe card. Especially if they've just recently had senior portraits done. That's a great picture to use for their tribe card. Gets it in and out of the way so they can guarantee to have their ID card ready for them when they arrive in August. June looks a little bit more free in terms of task items because we know that this is often a time where students are wrapping up their academic semesters, families may be starting to go on vacations, or they may even be starting summer jobs. So in June, we're going to encourage students to take advantage of our virtual stepping stone meetups. We want to make sure that they upload their health history and immunization forms with the Student Health Center. That's when they're going to actually select their housing towards the middle of the month. They can begin to explore their meal plan, and they will start the Blackboard course that addresses college studies, and they'll be given their peer advisor to start that exploration. July looks a little bit busier in terms of tasks, and there are a number of items here in July where students are more than likely going to need your assistance. The first is that you're going to want to have a conversation with your student about health insurance. William & Mary does require students to have some form of health insurance, and they either need to enroll in the university plan or waive the university plan and show documentation that they're covered by another health insurance system. And so that's really one of those opportunities for you and your student to have a really robust conversation about what does healthcare look like? How will they access it? Do they know what to do if they have a concern medically or if there's an ongoing medication that they need to get refilled? July is a great time to have those conversations. July is also when we're going to start talking about, you're going to actually receive the first e-statement for tuition and fees, and technically that e-statement is going to go to your student. This is where Heather and Taylor's family transition webinars will come in very handy. I believe there's usually a student account, an e-services, a financial aid centered webinar that you're going to want to log into so that you can learn all about that e-statement, tuition and fees, and how you can get access to that information via your students' permissions. And July is going to be a busy month for your student in terms of learning about expectations and standards here at the institution. They're going to complete that academic college studies Blackboard course. They're going to engage in a brand new course about AI and academic expectations there. And then we're going to start moving into a little bit about rights and responsibilities in terms of social behaviors and community expectations, where we encourage them to think about decision making through student ally. We think about how are they going to be engaged and active citizens through their citizen civic action plan. And we're going to encourage them to do some fun things like build out their club and org profile and think about industry or careers. July is also the hot month. We know everybody's already talking about it. Round one of course registration. And we say round one, it is round one. It's round one of three for the summer. Students don't finalize course registration until after they have truly stepped foot on campus and they've chatted with a pre-major faculty advisor. And so July is really about dipping your toes into the academic waters. In August, the Tribe Guide checklist and that dynamic portal are really going to be encouraging students to begin making social connections. Students are going to go into their personal information questionnaire. They're going to reaffirm in many cases, their information, emergency contacts that they've already established in May. We're going to hold community meetups virtually based off residence hall locations. And then we're going to start talking about what does the end of August look like. Hopefully everybody already has these dates on their calendars. If you haven't, please make sure that you do so. All residential new students will move in by appointment on Thursday, August 20th. Family orientation will be held all day Friday, August 21st. It is a must attend, even if you are sending your second, third, fourth, final child off to college. There's always something new to learn, always something new to learn about William and Mary by attending family orientation. And of course, student orientation will kick off that Friday and runs up until the first day of classes with activities through Tuesday evening on August 25th. So that's a brief overview of the actual checklist portion of the Tribe Guide. This is the personalization that changes year after year after year based off of the summer months and the expectations of the university. I'm going to move now into some of those core structure pieces that we chatted about that maintain sort of Tribe Guide availability throughout the course of the year and will be there throughout the course of time when you're with your students. So if you need to go back and look at something or you have questions about, well, what happened? What did we talk about before? Here are the big picture items. Under advising and registration of the Tribe Guide, this is where you're going to find information on our advising system. Planning and preparing is going to talk a little bit about the actual timelines of what's going on in the summer. You're going to find out when Blackboard, that college studies Blackboard course opens, when it closes, when registration opens, when ad drop opens, et cetera, et cetera. Registration is the nuts and bolts. This is actually information that is provided to you, to us, from the University Registrar's Office who coordinates PATH registration. And this is the site where you'll actually see down to the minute, when do things open, when do things close, how many credit hours can my student register for. This can be your support structure. So while your students are going through the Blackboard course, you have some insights as well through the Tribe Guide in these pages about what they're experiencing. Summer support talks about the actual web of advising that we have here at William & Mary. It talks about the difference between a pre-major academic advisor and a major academic advisor. When does that shift happen? What's the purpose of a peer advisor over the course of the summer? And what is a peer advisor going to do that maybe looks a little bit different than what a pre-major advisor will do? But it really sort of outlines what does that web of services look like. Because keep in mind, for academic advising here at William & Mary, it doesn't just end with this first round of registration. All incoming students technically meet with their academic advisors, their pre-major advisors, a total of 3 times. Once before they register for first semester, again before they register for second semester, and then again before they register for that third semester. And usually during that third semester is when most students will declare intent for major and will move to that major advisor. And so there is always a faculty member available to chat. Information about textbook ordering is also available through this portion of the Tribe Guide. Encourage you to review that. We are moving to a new textbook supplier, which is really exciting here at William and Mary, with a robust number of options when it comes to online e-textbooks, which we know our students are very much into these days versus that good old paper and pen. And then also there'll be information about ordering. How soon can students order? When do they order? And when do they pick up? Can be found on the site. Once you've moved and familiarized yourself with academics and registration, I'm going to encourage you next to take a look at the health and wellness portion of the Tribe Guide. Health and wellness for us consists of 4 departments that support a holistic set of well-being outcomes for our students. There are virtual resources that students can tap into now over the course of the summer, in addition to preparing for what resources might be available to them once they are in person on campus. If you are curious about what's being offered on campus in terms of health and wellness, there's an app for that. Just like our William and Mary mobile app, which we encourage you to download for the mobile orientation experience, William and Mary Wellness itself has its very own standalone app because over the course of a standard academic week, there can be upwards of 75 different wellness opportunities offered to students, most at no cost. And so if you're interested in what wellness opportunities may lie out there for students, feel free to give that wellness app a run through. You can see all the different Fitwell classes that are offered, all the different opportunities for meditation, stress therapy, pet therapy. Dogs are a constant on campus, whether they're roaming the streets of campus and the sidewalks, or they're in the wellness center. Pet therapy is a big mode of support here at William and Mary, and they're all included in that wellness app. So if you just feel like your student is missing your family's furry friend, and they could just use a little bit of pet love, you can look that up on the wellness app and send them that direction. Health and wellness is also important because if we reference back to some of those decisions you have to make in the Tribe Guide checklist, we think about health insurance, etc. This site will really help you do a deep dive into what is offered through Student Health Center services. It will share with you a little bit more about counseling services on campus, and it will talk through what therapy options are available, whether small group, large group, or even referrals, depending on your student's need. But health and wellness is a great section of the Tribe Guide to bookmark. Housing and dining of the Tribe Guide is typically one of those first concerns, one of those first interests for incoming students, and that's understandable. The housing and dining section of the Tribe Guide is specific to this upcoming year and to the new student transition. The three breakout topics here are housing, the Tribe Card or our ID card, we're known as we call it here on campus, as well as meal plans. All students who reside on campus are required to have a meal plan. There are exceptions if your student chooses to live in an apartment with a kitchen, with a dedicated kitchen. However, those opportunities are typically reserved for upper level students. So most of your students will be required to have an all you care to eat unlimited meal plan offered by the university. Housing on campus is required for students who are joining us directly from high school for the first 2 years of their time here at William and Mary. And so that means if it's required, it means that it will be held and reserved for them. So we guarantee housing for those first 2 years. What's really excited, some new changes within the Tribe Card opportunity here on campus is that we're moving to a mobile card for the fall, and we encourage all students to take advantage of that mobile card opportunity. Just a swipe or tap of their phone will give them all the access to university resources that their physical card used to provide them access to. I know as a faculty staff member, I'm excited to be able to just pull the card out of my wallet on my phone, tap, swipe, and move forward with my day as well when I go to the rec center, enter a dining hall, or even access a residence hall myself. Meal plans, as we've mentioned, are required, and you can see the variety of different meal plans as well as access to menus that are offered through the various meal locations across campus. You can see hours of operations through that site. And of course, you can learn more about how to get in touch with a dietitian or nutritionist offered through dining services if your student has nutritional or dietary concerns or restrictions that you'd like to learn more about or make plans for before your campus arrival. And lastly, the last of the four sections on that tribe guide that we want to make sure that you're aware of is student involvement. There are so many ways that students can become engaged, active citizens here on campus that we don't want you to miss out on a moment of opportunity. Um, when it comes to student involvement, we highlight four areas: campus organizations and programs. So that would be typically where you're going to find out more about recognized clubs or organizations on campus. Civic and community engagement. So if your student is very much interested in mentoring, community service opportunities, or service learning, civic and community engagement is going to be an area you're going to want to explore. And then religious and spiritual resources offered by a number of campus ministries adjacent to William and Mary's campus, coordinated by the Student Center for Inclusive Excellence. This is a great resource if your student is thinking about exploring faith. Or just spiritual community resources, or maybe knows that that's a cornerstone of their value set and wants to continue that once they're here in Williamsburg. And lastly, we want students to know a little bit about Colonial Williamsburg. They're literally right across the street. It would be a shame for students not to take advantage of their Good Neighbor Pass, the Collegiate Pass, and reap the benefits of being a student at William and Mary and be able to get you some discounts too by going and visiting the Colonial Williamsburg area, especially during this 250th anniversary of the nation. It's a big year, it's a big time for celebration. And there are a lot of opportunities for students to take advantage of just across the street in that historic district. The last portion of the tribe guide that I want to spend a little bit of time on that looks a little bit different from the others because it feels a little bit more, dare I say, practical, is the new student orientation section. The orientation section is where you're going to find information about the new student and family orientation schedules. You're going to get the link to the mobile app, which many of you have already downloaded because of your visits to campus for Green and Gold Days or Day for Admitted Students. And then lastly, this website is where you're going to find information about move-in. Everything from how do I slate my appointment? When do I slate my move-in appointment? What do we pack? How do we find our building? When do we pack? All of those good things you've heard about our move-in process will be found here through this orientation website. The move-in will also include specific color-coded routes for move-in based off of your student's residence hall of choice. And I think as we joke, if you know campus or think you know campus like the back of your hand on move-in day, we want you to pretend that you know nothing about it. And we want you to follow our color-coded routes so that everybody swims in the same direction and everybody has a smooth move-in experience. So orientation is probably going to be the site that you're going to visit most frequently in July and August. The other four sites I'm going to encourage you to explore now so that you can get a good bearing and some context for the overall university experience. But that is the Tribe Guide. A lot of pages, a lot to explore. I know Heather's been dropping links like crazy in the chat as we've been going through. But ultimately, if all else fails, want to encourage you. Yes, you've got family engagement. Heather and Taylor are great resources, but STEP is also here for you and your students. As Heather mentioned, there may be opportunities where your students will be directed from one of their events over to us in STEP, and we may do the same depending on the context. But for families, we think it's important for you to know that while we have the Tribe Guide and we talk to you during orientation, it's also important for you to know as families and supporters that we are with your students every step of the way. So not just during time of deposit into orientation, but also through that My Tribe guide as we help students find, form, and then focus their university experiences up through commencement. And so your students will hear an awful lot from us, not just this summer, but throughout their time at the university. And we're really excited to get to know them and you over the course of these next few months and years. So with that, I think we're going to open it up to some Q&A, and I'm going to
We are going to open it up to some
see
Q&A.
what's going on, and I'm going to rely on Heather and Taylor to tell
And
me a
then
little bit more about what folks are interested in.
yeah, I just opened up the Q&A families, so any of those questions that you have, please do go ahead and ask. One of the things to note is that as we were going through that month by month high level overview of the checklist, if you were like, ooh, I have questions about advising and course registration, I have advising questions about student counts, I have questions about meal plans or special dietary needs of my student. All will be webinars that we host throughout the summer. I did mention that we have about 10 scheduled. We schedule those intentionally to fall before some of those big deadlines so that you can get some good information about those. So keep in mind, this isn't your only resource or only opportunity to ask questions, and we will do some deep, deep dives over the summer in those other webinars. Okay, Q&A is open, so please do go ahead and share those questions. I have one here. Do students get passes to Colonial Williamsburg?
Yes, they do. Your student will need to take their student ID, their tribe card, mobile or hard copy, down to the ticket office in Colonial Williamsburg, and they'll actually print off for them a collegiate pass. During orientation, we have a group of about 250 student volunteers that we call orientation aides. They're typically the students in the neon shirts that you see in all of the pictures about orientation. Those student leaders will typically take the incoming students of their groups down to Colonial Williamsburg during free time during orientation to get the collegiate pass. And with that collegiate pass comes discounts for you to also reap some benefits of discounts and opportunities over the course of your time as a university member and supporter.
Wonderful. Okay, let's look at these questions that we have here. Where's the best place to look for a financial aid process timeline?
That's a great question. We're going to encourage you to review the financial aid and e-services website directly. Every student's timeline is going to look a little bit different based off of deposit. Um, and in many cases, when your student goes into their actual e-services account, updates will be posted, oftentimes from their specific financial aid advisor. Financial aid advisors are divided by student last name, and so there's always a specific contact in the office that your student can reference and reach out to.
Wonderful. Okay. Someone did ask what is the app that we should download, and so I answered that question in the Q&A, and Taylor is typing some answers as well. So be keeping an eye on the actual Q&A box there. It is the William and Mary mobile app. So if you
Mhm.
search in the app store of your choosing William and Mary mobile, it should pop up for you. But if you just Google William and Mary mobile app, you'll be taken to the homepage to download the mobile app. It's a wonderful resource, great information, and during move-in and orientation, it will be your source of truth for schedule information, move-in routes, all of the things that you need to know. So orienting yourself with the resource now is a wonderful way to
Mhm.
go. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. What is family orientation like? We plan to have our younger children with us for move-in. Is it best for them to go home before the family orientation? So I will go ahead and answer this one. We will have a family orientation know before you go webinar this summer as well, near the end of the summer to get you ready for family orientation. At a high level overview, first, the draft schedule is available online right now. So on that orientation homepage that Lauren referenced, you can see, and I don't anticipate any meaningful changes to the draft schedule, what the family orientation schedule looks like on Friday. But at a high level, in the morning on that Friday, we will all gather in Kaplan Arena, all being family members, because students are going to be orienting at that point in time. So they'll be on their own separate path during orientation. Families and supporters, we will all be in Kaplan Arena for a couple of hours of large group sessions and one big welcome from the university as well. And then after a good healthy lunch break that you can go explore one of the many, many food options in Williamsburg, we'll come back to the School of Education in the afternoon for a conference style afternoon. We have about 20 different sessions offered for families across 4 different time blocks and a large connections fair or tabling fair opportunity that has over 40 campus partners present. That is a very move and groove 30-minute sessions, pretty active session. Really, it's up to each individual family. Siblings are present every year, little ones and older ones who are maybe interested in the William and Mary experience themselves. Grandparents are present. It's really open to anyone, but that's a great conversation to have about what is capacity on that day. Do they want to sit in Kaplan Arena for a couple of hours? And do you want to experience that journey with them? Or is that just a parent and supporter only endeavor? More information about family orientation will come over the next few months, but if you want to take a look at that schedule, you can go ahead and do so now. Okay, let's see.
Heather, do you want to talk a little bit about accessing webinar and family resources in terms of logins, et cetera? I know sometimes there's some confusion about, for students, we have the My Tribe Guide and they use their William and Mary credentials. Do families get any credentials for anything that they need to?
Yeah, great question. So essentially, students will have their own William and Mary login, and families do not have a at wm.edu email address provided or login. So anytime you're prompted to create a username or password for something, that would be e-services, which is how you pay tuition, or proxy, which is how you access potentially grade information if your student has provided you access to both of those. You can use any email and create your own password for those. Of course, I recommend using one account, one email account, and one password so it's easy to remember. And also the family connection, which is where you're receiving emails and registering for events, will require a username and password as well. Those are not created for you, but you can use any email address, Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, whatever email address you have. There's only one carrier or email provider we've ever run into that hasn't worked, but it's extremely, extremely, extremely rare. But my recommendation is to keep track of all of those somewhere because the systems do not speak to each other. And so you'll want to make sure that you have those written down somewhere and you know what your username and password is for each of those different systems. But great question. All right. Someone asked a question about the tribe card, and I will prompt Lauren that we might not know the answer to this exactly, but I think we have a high level understanding. Since there will be a mobile card this year, which is new for all of us, will there be a
Mhm.
physical card in addition for students who want to take a phone break, like go on a walk or leave their phone in their room, etc.?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually one that we asked ourselves, um, because oftentimes, let's be honest, I'm a little older, and sometimes the technology and I do not get along. But we've been told that it is a one or the other. And if students would prefer a physical card, that's well within their right, if that's a word, if that's the correct word. They are well within their right to request that over a mobile. But it is a one or the other is our understanding moving forward.
Great question. Are
Mhm.
students allowed to have cars on campus? And if students do not have a car, is there a shuttle system to get around town? How do students do it?
They WADA. So first and second year students are not allowed to have a car on campus. And instead we encourage them to use WADA, the Williamsburg Area Transit Authority System. That's a series of buses and shuttles even trolleys that can take students as far out down Richmond Road towards Jamestown, the Jamestown settlement, as far out down Richmond to the outlets, and down Monticello towards the Target and Monticello shopping centers. So that bus system makes a loop around campus as well as hits those sort of farther areas of Williamsburg. But most of the things that students need during their first year are within walking distance. So there's a Food Lion shopping center close by, as well as the shopping center has a few different restaurants, which is directly across the street from a pharmacy. And then the Student Health Center also has its own pharmacy where students can pick up basic prescriptions and any medicines, over-the-counter medications that they might need. So we try to keep things pretty accessible, and Williamsburg is fairly walkable for some of those more immediate needs.
Wonderful. We've gotten a couple questions about the timing and process for room selection and
Mhm,
roommates. Can you provide a
mhm.
high-level overview of the time, like the timeline for room selection, and how do students know which housing to select? I will
Yeah.
add Heather's asterisk is we're doing a deep dive with Residence Life on room selection and roommate selection, but I know many of you are thinking about it now, so we'll go ahead and give a high-level overview.
High level overview. Um, So students need to complete their housing application and contract by the end of May, May 29th. That basically tells us, affirms for us that your student is joining us in August. At that point in time, that's when most students are going to probably log into the portal and start looking to see if there's a potential match within the system for a roommate, if that's the direction that they'd like to go. We always encourage that they wait until that deadline so that they have the most opportunity to connect with individuals versus the first few weeks, the numbers of the pool are shallow. And so we want to make sure that there's enough people in that pool so that they get an appropriate connection. I'm also going to encourage that if your student wants to know their roommate, does not want to go random with their housing opportunity, that they sign up for a stepping stone. We held our first successful stepping stone last night, where we had a robust number of students who were engaging and talked and connected. And students, when they register for a stepping stone, get the contact information with permission of everybody else on the call. And so it's a great way for them to build those connections outside of social media, but also to follow up with people that they feel like may be a good match for them in terms of social connection. So the application's due the end of May. We encourage students to sort of be connecting and be looking, even if it's not just for a roommate, just to be connecting with the rest of their cohort. It's a great opportunity to start building those friendships and figure out maybe who's coming from a similar geographic area. And then William and Mary Residence Life will email your student with a housing selection time slot. At that point in time, it'll be the week, I believe it's the 17th and 18th of June. For most students, they'll actually go into the housing portal and they'll select both their roommate, if that's of choice, and their housing assignment. And then 2 weeks later, they'll select their move-in appointment. And so that is something that your students need to do themselves. Sharing of credentials, William and Mary credentials, even if it's to help them accomplish a task, is technically against the honor code. And so if your student is not able to participate themselves in a process, whether it's housing or it's completing their Blackboard course, they need to reach out to that office directly and let them know that there's a conflict so that the office can help them arrange an alternate setup or arrangement. Once students have made their housing selection, they're pretty much good to go for housing, and then they can start figuring out all of those nuts and bolts, lofts, microwaves, fridges, etc. Now, in terms of who wants to live where, if you visit the Residence Life website, you can actually visit all of the housing opportunities for first year students. If your student is a transfer student, they will be looking at upper level halls, but first year students live together per building or per floor. And so those are a little bit more limited in scope. We recommend that students sort of think about the type of connections they want. Do they want a big building, a small community? Do they want to get to know a small number of people really well? Do they like sort of living around other people and have lots of opportunities for socialization? That's really, for most students, what drives their housing selection. It's not necessarily proximity to academic buildings. Most of our residence halls are within a 5 to 10 minute walk of most academic buildings on campus. Um, and to be perfectly honest, the idea of rolling out of bed and running to class during your first year is less of a trend than when you become an upper level student. And so for first year students, thinking about that community and the social connections is what I would lean in on versus proximity to classes and class locations, especially because they won't know that yet.
And I see two follow-up questions on that I do want to clarify. If they want to choose their roommate, do they need to do that by the time the contract is submitted, or can they do that after?
Great clarification question. No, roommates do not have to be noted until it's time to select. There's a whole process Residence Life will talk through what they have to do in the portal so that they can be connected with other students. So when they make a housing selection, they're connected and adjoined. And that's a process that happens after the housing application is completed.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
Okay, I do have a kind of specific question here, but it might
Yeah.
apply to a few others. Student has completed the new student inventory, and it looks like when they went to select an intended major, CAMS was not listed.
Mhm.
What does a student do if their intended major isn't on the list?
If your student has gone through the new student inventory and their intended major or a preferred major, because they can pick up to, I believe it's 4 or 5, is not on the list, they need to pick or select the major that is most closely aligned. In some cases, majors have not yet, some of our majors are still in process with accreditation. And so we can't technically offer them out until we have that stamp of approval from the governing body here in the Commonwealth. And so in most cases, the advising folks will align them with a program that is more closely connected, even if it's not necessarily part of that roster. So they just need to pick something that's within the realm.
Thank you. When do you anticipate that Pathways pre-orientation trip options will be announced?
Awesome. Um, all of our pre-orientation programs have very different opening timeframes. I believe the Pathways registration opens, I believe it's May 20th, somewhere around there, to allow time for our incoming transfer students to also register, as their deposit deadline looks a little bit different than our class of 2030. Whew, students. Um, all that information can actually be found on our POPS landing page. I believe it is a wm.edu/step/pops, if I'm remembering that correctly off the top of my head. I'll look it up though, and I will toss it into the chat.
And we will have a very detailed pre-orientation programs webinar this time next Wednesday. So that is our next topic on the docket is pre-orientation programs. So you can make yourself aware of all of the options. And I would guess that by then we know a little bit more about what some of those options might be.
Mhm.
Okay. If move-in is on August 20th, which it is, move-in is on August 20th, do you recommend that out-of-state students come in on the 19th, or do they typically move in later in the afternoon? What's the approach there?
Oh, that's a great question. I think my personal take is that if I'm coming from out of state and move-in is on the 20th, I probably want myself in Williamsburg at least the day before, so that I can get lay of the land to get settled, do final shopping. We have large scale stores here too. Instacart works, putting things on layaway or pick up for delivery. Great options, especially if you're traveling to Williamsburg. We have the Walmarts, the Targets, etc.
We have
But I
two
always think
targets.
two Targets. That's right, Heather, two Targets. Um, you have to be specific when you place that order that you know where you're going. But I would suggest coming in the day earlier if you're able to, so you can get lay of the land and just be settled, especially if there's a time difference.
Yeah, I agree with that 100% in terms of do most out-of-state students move in the morning or afternoon? That's very different.
Mhm.
We're going to talk about this later on in the summer. Really advanced planning happening right now, which I appreciate. But we will get
Mhm.
to more of this stuff in the summer. I know that many are making flight plans and flight arrangements. If you're out of
Mhm.
state, I think it's best for everyone if you're here the day before, if possible. Just in case something happens with flights, we're very flexible on the ground on move-in day, but maybe just giving yourself the ability to be flexible if you need to by trying to arrive here the day before, if possible.
Mhm.
And is there any exploring you want to do in Williamsburg? That's a great question as well. anything you may have missed when you did a campus visit. I
Mhm.
will say though, really thinking about your move-in day in terms of what does an ideal move-in day look like for your family? Is it that we're moving in early in the morning, we get everything done, and then we can have a long lunch together, we can walk around Colonial Williamsburg and really just soak in some last hours together as a family to make some of those last minute Target runs after we've already got them in the room and settled? Or are we moving them in the afternoon because we want to do all of that in the morning? We want to have a long pancake breakfast at one of the many pancake houses in Williamsburg.
Mhm.
We want to go to Target and pick up our orders, and then we want to hop in the move-in line, which leads really nicely into the next question, which is what does move-in day typically look like? How early does it start? When is the last appointment for the day? Again, we're doing some real advanced planning here, but it doesn't hurt to give you an idea of a high-level overview of what move-in day looks like.
Yeah. So the first move-in time slot will not be until about 8:15, 8:30. And those timed move-in slots will run about every 15 minutes up until about 3:45, 4 o'clock. We try not to slate move-in appointments beyond that so that families have a chance to settle, get something to eat. And then after dinner, we do have community building opportunities for students, and I believe there may even be some family engagement opportunities that evening as well, not to spoil anything. Um, but that evening, while not required, highly encouraged for students to be involved. And I will say that the fear of missing out, the FOMO kicks in really deeply for students once they're moved into the building. And so we encourage you really to take advantage of that full Thursday to think about what does that time look like for you and for your student, so that you feel like you've settled and you've done all the things you wanted to do, before starting and embarking on your orientation experiences. In terms of move-in itself, like I mentioned, we're going to ask that you pretend like you don't know anything about campus. It is a very structured process. There is one way into campus we want you to follow. If you arrive too early for your move-in slot, we will ask you to depart the line and wait your turn. That's really what makes the process run smoothly, is everyone following the rules and being mindful of others, and sort of the bigger picture of what's happening. But the move-in line is contactless. So you stay in your car, you run the vehicle through, you visit several stations, you move directly to your student's building, you unload the vehicle. There's a whole process to that Heather and I will talk through later this summer. But you unload the vehicle, you move your car, and then you start schlepping things up to the space. And there will be volunteers that will help you move as well. So we look forward to sort of talking through and unpacking, that process a little bit later this summer.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, let's see. Is it true that classes are online on the Monday and Tuesday before Thanksgiving, so students can plan to come home the weekend before Thanksgiving? So as the academic calendar currently stands right now, we do not have a denotation of remote classes on that Monday and Tuesday. This is subject to change. And if it does change, family engagement will alert you. But this is just a best practice around scheduling for breaks, regardless of the specific break, which is typically we do not advise that students schedule any travel until after they receive their syllabus in their class. So
Mhm.
once they receive all of their syllabi for all of their classes, then we recommend sitting down and scheduling that travel. Because by that time, some of those decisions will be made at a university level regarding remote instruction on that Monday and Tuesday. But if I were to answer that right now, I would tell you that we do not have that denotation on the calendar and that it runs the 25th to the 29th of November. So you could make travel plans accordingly, but it really is best practice regardless of break, fall break, spring break, Thanksgiving break, whatever it is. It's also helpful to know if your student has the ability to travel based on some of their coursework that may be due at that time. And as they get more advanced in their William and Mary experience, are there engagements that they want to take advantage of here in Williamsburg? So at this moment, we don't see it on the academic calendar. That is subject to change. We will let you know once we do see that change pop up. But just try to have a conversation with them once they receive their syllabi to plan some of that travel. I know it can make things a little challenging. We like to plan really well in advance. I'm hearing that from this cohort of families where we've already received questions about winter break as well. So we're really ahead of the game here. But this is one of those moments where a student will have to really understand the full scope of their academic obligations before arranging travel. Okay. Besides the deposit, is there anything else we owe at this time? When is the next payment due?
Great, great question. Um, your fall e-statement, your student's fall e-statement for tuition and fees will be released to their William and Mary email account, typically in early July. The typical structure is that an e-statement is launched at the start of every month around the 10th, and then is due the following month around the first or the second, depending on when the calendar day falls. In this case, for incoming students, we try to push out those e-services, those tuition statements and bills to students closer to the start of the month. So there's more time for planning, for financial aid exploration, et cetera. And so we usually recommend that you start to be on the lookout for those a little bit after the July 4th holiday. But it could be as late as July 10th that it actually technically arrives in your student's inbox. And again, Heather and Taylor will do a whole webinar on e-statements, financial aid, and billing, so that you can learn more about how you can actually access that student account so that you can help with any financial supports that may be agreed upon based off of your family situation. The bill will be due technically August 1st, August 2nd, depending on where the calendar day falls. And I will say that this is where our fabulous colleagues and student accounts and financial aid will become priceless to you. If you're having concerns, if you're not sure what you're seeing, if you're not understanding something, reach out to them, chat with them, and they will help walk you through what you're seeing or what you should be seeing and how that's applying to your student situation.
Yep. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, before we move on to last notes, last slides, I do have a question for you, Lauren, and I would love to hear your thoughts. I'm hearing lots of great questions about the nuts and bolts and the to-dos across the summer. I love a good checklist and I love to work ahead. But I'm curious, what advice do you have for families right now in this moment as they're supporting their student on this journey?
No, that's a great question, Heather. And I think it's one that you and I have oftentimes a very similar answer to, because the student and the family transition right now is quite similar in the sense that for many of you, you're wrapping up a chapter and starting a new one, often in this parallel situation. And so I'm going to encourage you to encourage your student to really sort of be mindful of the moments that they're in. We had a lot of students who talk about, I can't wait to do X, I can't wait to do Y. And my question back to them is, but what's happening right now? What's next week? What's the celebration that's happening 2 weeks from now? So many of your students are prepping for final exams. They're prepping in some cases for AP or IB tests, or they're even thinking strategically towards summer jobs or internships. And I'm going to encourage you, yes, these to-do lists and these task lists, they'll get accomplished, they'll get completed. We'll make sure of that. But I also don't want them to miss out on the moments that help them feel like that they really tied up their high school or their prior college experience on a really positive note, where they've spent time with friends, they've spent time with families, and they've had lots of good conversation.
Thank you, Lauren. Yep, I will follow up with that and say now is kind of the time to let them enjoy these lasts that they're probably reveling in, their last varsity sporting event, their last prom or formal, their last recital, their last concert.
Mhm.
There are so many wonderful moments. They haven't even really graduated yet. So there are things that they still need to accomplish before they can really dive into everything that comes next here at William and Mary. The Tribe Guide checklist is designed to really move them across the summer. Nothing has to be accomplished right now. Nothing is due right now. Everything is designed to really move them in a phased way throughout the summer. And so our webinars will follow that same approach. We will have a series of webinars, like I mentioned. Next is pre-orientation programs, followed by student accessibility services. So any academic accommodations or accommodations your student may need for a documented disability, that is something that you are going to want to tune into. If they're receiving any support in high school right now, or they require any of that additional support, you'll want to learn about all of those resources available to your student. A room selection overview, the transfer summer experience. So for all of our transfer families on the call or who are watching the recording, we'll have a special one just for your summer experience. Academic advising and course registration, student accounts, dining at William and Mary, move-in and orientation, know before you go, and family orientation, know before you go. They don't all take place on a Wednesday. Some of them take place on different days of the calendar, depending on summer schedules and everyone's availability. We do our best to keep it consistent, but always keep an eye on that webinar webpage, and our newsletters will tell you the dates for those webinars as they are scheduled. And I think my last piece of advice to all of you would be to really enjoy this phase. It's exciting. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking, and it's a different phase of supporting your student. If you are wanting to talk with other families about this next phase, I encourage you to join our On the Same Page book club. We're reading Kelly Ratty's Out to Sea, A Parent Survival Guide to the Freshman Voyage. We'll have small group discussions, a guided workbook for you to complete over the summer, and you receive that book and materials free of charge. We'll mail that straight to your door if you register for our book club experience. It's a wonderful opportunity to really reflect on this special phase and special transition in your family's experience. And like Lauren mentioned, we might have a special in-person post-move-in meetup for book club members if you join our book club. Like I mentioned, my name's Heather Deer. I'm the Director of Family Engagement. Taylor is our Assistant Director. We're here to support you however we can. If you're on campus, come visit us in the Sadler Center. We have lots of good swag and goodies for families if you're in town this summer. Our website is a very robust resource, our phone line and email address. Thank you, Lauren, for being here with us to kick off our season. You'll end our season with us when we talk about orientation and move in. And we can't wait to support you all this summer. Thanks again, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye, everyone.